Today's episode was sponsored by Mimosa over on Patreon. And Mimosa told me that they were named after a flower. And so I tried to dot the I's of her patch with the flower because she asked me to. And as it turns out, flowers are very difficult to knit, particularly when you're just guessing at how to do it. So hopefully it turned out decent, but either way, thank you so much, Mimosa, and let's go ahead and get this bad boy up on the wall. Yeah! So, yeah, here it is. I feel pretty confident that it's actually in frame this time, but if it's not, then it's official. I cannot frame a shot. I asked Mimosa if she had any special shout-outs, and she did, so let me get that now. And I do want to reiterate that this is Mimosa talking. They said this because I'm going to be saying it, but if you think they're my words, it will sound very conceited. Okay, so Mimosa said, "I'd like to thank you for your witty insight and your knitting. I love to draw or knit or hobby along to your videos, and from the comments, I see there's a lot of us in your community. So shout out to Willie, and shout out to all the hobbyists who are only half watching the screen already." Which, yeah, I do want to take a second to shout Mimosa out because they seem like a really cool person, and they've been very patient with me, because this has taken me a while to get to. They were also very understanding with me when I told them what this video would be about, and they were still willing to support it. But with that in mind, I do want to say that nothing I say here reflects the views of Mimosa. It might, I don't know, but she did not know what I was going to say when I said it. So I don't want people thinking like, okay, she was just a really cool supporter who I appreciate. And speaking of, before I start, I do just want to say that I made most of this video before the debate. And then the debate happened. And while I want to say that I still agree with everything that I said in this video, I also want to say that I am now really, really, really upset that these are our only two choices. But yeah, I think what I said still stands, which is really upsetting. I am recording this video in the year 2024, and it's bad. Things have basically gone to shit. The world keeps finding new and interesting ways to make me feel terrified, and honestly, the only thing keeping me going at this point is the fact that I don't think that my body is physically capable of processing everything all at once. And you know, in the before time, this is where the hopeful part of me would have kicked in and said something along the lines of, "There's nowhere to go but up." But I've learned not to say that anymore. Things can get worse, and there is a very, very, very good chance that they will. As I'm sure many of you are aware, 2024 is an election year in the United States. And it's looking increasingly likely that the person who's going to win that election is former Fresh Prince of Bel-Air guest star Donald J. Trump. And like, here's the thing, I'm not a pundit, so I may be very wrong about that. Frankly, I hope that I am. I'd love nothing more than to look back at this video and think, man, what an idiot I was. Also, I was nowhere near as muscular as I currently am. That said, though, things are feeling just a little bit too 2016-y for my tastes, and frankly, even if they weren't, and every poll was saying that Trump becoming president was statistically impossible, I'd still be bracing for impact because I don't know if my body could survive being completely blindsided a second time. And there are a lot of reasons why I think he's gonna win, but one of the biggest ones is Christians. The evangelical vote is extremely influential in this country, and Trump has managed to tap into that demographic like few before him. Somehow. On paper, the two should not mix together. They're like peanut butter and tuna fish. Actually, no, that's not far enough apart because both of those things are foods, so they at least have one thing in common. They're like peanut butter and a stapler. It truly makes no sense to me how these two things ended up joining forces. And so I decided to try and make sense of it the best way that I know how, by watching a terrible Christian movie about it. Christians are not generally subtle about telling you exactly what they believe through the medium of film. So I figured if I could find something about Trump, it could give me some insights into why they love voting for the guy, and it might even give the rest of us ideas for how to convince them to not do that. So I watched something called The Trump Prophecy, and well, it certainly was interesting. It definitely gave me some new insights, but unfortunately, I feel like ultimately, it left me with more questions than answers. The movie opens by letting the audience know that it was based on a true story, to which I say, no shit. And that's not to say that I believe that this is a realistic depiction of some great miracle that happened, because I super don't. Rather, the story being told here is so mind-numbingly dull and unremarkable that the only way anyone could possibly think that it was worth telling is if they were reenacting something that they believed happened in real life. The plot of this movie can easily be summed up in a single sentence. In 2011, some random guy predicted that Trump would become president. That is pretty much all that happens in it, and they somehow make it last for an hour and a half. Or two if you count the weird propaganda documentary that they tack on to the end of it. The filmmakers are under the impression that this prophecy is the most amazing thing that has ever happened, and so they waste no time making sure that the audience hears it, piping it in over some stock footage of fire while the credits roll.
Spirit of God told me, I have chosen this man for such a time as this. For as Benjamin Netanyahu is to Israel, so shall this man be to the United States of America.
Okay, really was not expecting Netanyahu to get mentioned. He's kind of the last person that I want to talk about right now. Hopefully that's not a huge thing in this movie. From there, we cut to a single mother doing spoon drugs over a bunch of old newspapers, as was the style at the time. She passes out, causing her house to go up in smoke, and it's here that we meet our protagonist, a fireman whose name I did not bother to learn because it literally doesn't matter. He braves the blaze to save the day and manages to save a little girl.
I got the child, I'm moving out. You're gonna be okay. You're safe now. It's gonna be all right.
My baby brother! He's still inside!
Be advised, we have reports of a third victim inside.
Why did she wait until she was outside to say that? It feels like she probably could have brought that up sooner. So yeah, the fire gentleman goes back inside to try and save the other kid.
Dear God,
Okay, I'm not a fireman, but I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to stop mid-rescue to stare at someone and say, "Oh my god," because time is a factor. Even if you're pretty sure the person is already dead, I still think it's a get-in, get-out situation. And yes, unsurprisingly, the little boy does not survive the fire because, well, let's face it wouldn't be a Christian movie if he lived. This leads to our protagonist developing intense PTSD, which manifests itself in the form of a series of nightmares, which, if we're being honest, would actually look more like wet dreams, had it not been for the hellish imagery they splice in.
Huh.
And yeah, a large portion of this movie is just watching this guy struggle with PTSD, which is a bit of a problem because I'm not entirely sure how well this movie understands PTSD.
Deep breath. Until recently, nobody knew what PTSD was.
Well, a lot of guys at the department have had the same symptoms.
I don't want to label you, so let's just try some medication at first.
Like what?
Oh, an SSRI. Something to help stabilize you for 6 months or so.
Granted, I'm not a doctor, but I don't think that diagnosis is generally made with a stethoscope. Also, what do you mean you don't want to label him? You're a doctor. That's what you do. It's called diagnosing. Still, at least this scene depicts PTSD as something medical, which is not always the case here. I feel like a strong argument could be made that this movie ultimately believes that PTSD is demonic. Mainly because it often takes the form of a demon. There's this very strange scene where the guy is cleaning his boat, and it seems as though an invisible being attacks him and takes control of his body. Why was it in his garage? What's actually confusing about this scene is that it happens after he's already having nightmares. So if the movie is trying to say that PTSD is caused by the devil, they're going about it in a weird way because, like, he already had PTSD before the devil got there. Although I guess maybe the implication here is that seeing the kid die screwed him up enough that it caused him to turn away from God, and that left him vulnerable to Satan, which is where his real problems began. Shit, I think that actually is what's happening. I don't like that I'm able to think like these movies now. Whatever the case, though, he doesn't actually take the meds he's prescribed as a matter of principle. So a lot of the next section of the movie is just watching him writhe around in bed having nightmares. Why is she dabbing his head with a wet paper towel? This isn't a hospital tent in the Civil War. Just wake him up. Although I guess in her defense, he might be sweating an awful lot right now because his dreams do seem very hot. We see multiple shots of him being engulfed in flames, and there's this lava creature that keeps popping up, who I'm assuming is the devil. what's weird about these sequences is that they're actually pretty good. The imagery is fairly interesting, and the effects are surprisingly well done. And honestly, that makes this movie worse to me. I feel like if everything here was completely terrible, then I would be a lot more forgiving, but seeing any amount of competency just makes me want to judge all the bad shit around it that much harsher. It's kind of like the cinematic equivalent of being declared fit for trial. There are a lot of movies that I talk about on this channel that I think could probably plead insanity, but after seeing that the people making this are clearly aware of what they're doing on some level, I feel like they need to be sent straight to jail. Fireman's nightmares become so severe that his wife suggests that he seek a second opinion, even though, again, he did not actually listen to the first opinion.
You got your test results back quicker than usual.
Okay, I kind of think that they may have gotten their doctors mixed up, because this is the guy who seems like he should be prescribing him SSRIs. You think that if someone was going to run a series of tests, it would be the one in the white lab coat.
Mark, this isn't all in your head. You have an extremely low thyroid. You have severe adrenal burnout. You have the hormones of a 70-year-old. With numbers like yours, I don't know how you're getting out of bed. I
can't believe I'm saying this, but I don't think that therapy is what this conservative Christian needs. It kind of just sounds like he's dying. And frankly, I don't know how much I trust this guy's medical opinion. He brings up God an awful lot in a way that's probably legal, but definitely shouldn't be.
What do I do?
Well, that's where God's grace comes in. His doing what we're not able to do. Tuning into his voice will help quiet what's raging inside of you.
And the scary thing is that the way America's healthcare system is going, it won't be long until every doctor is recommending connecting with God as a treatment. There will be a $40 copay. After watching her husband struggle night after night, our protagonist's wife breaks down and asks for help from above.
Lord, I know that you can hear me. And I am begging you. Lord, please, I cannot do this alone. I need you to heal him. Lord, please.
Why is she doing this in a car? Is it an acoustics thing, like when people film front-facing videos? Because I don't think that audio quality matters when you're praying. Like, she even says it herself. I know you can hear me. Which, side note, very funny way to begin a prayer. It makes it sound less like you're trying to talk to God and more like you're trying to talk to heaven's manager. Also, I don't know how evangelicals do things, but if there's one thing I learned from years of being Catholic, it's that if you don't say amen at the end, then your wish won't come true. Hers does, though. Kinda. That night, the main dude falls asleep, and this time, it's not a demon that visits him.
Come on! Come on! I'm not afraid of you.
Alright, did not realize that that's what God looks like, but whatever. I'm just happy that the fusion reactor from Spider-Man 2 is getting work again. You'd think that a visit from God in all of his spherical glory would be enough to cure our protagonist's PTSD, but it doesn't really. He still seems to have nightmares, but for some reason, those nightmares now allow him to see the future.
The fact is, money is being drained out of this country, and it's at an alarming rate. 350 billion this year from China alone, 4 billion from Colombia. Every country, they all make good deals. I'm concerned that we're going to go over the abyss. We have incompetent leadership. We have people that have no clue. Either that or they're very evil, and I don't think they're evil. I think they have no clue.
God said, "You're hearing the voice of a president."
The main dude jumps from his chair and races to his desk. And it's there that he makes the official Trump prophecy.
I have chosen this man, Donald Trump, for such a time as this. For as Benjamin Netanyahu is to Israel, so shall this man be to the United States of America.
And again, when I set out to make this video, I was not expecting the titular prophecy to contain that name or really any mention of the I word, and I really wish that it didn't. I'm not sure if you guys know this, but that's a very controversial topic these days, and I, for one, would like to avoid it at all costs. But yes, that run-on sentence is the entire basis for this movie. And because of that, everyone we see that hears it has to act like it's the most incredible, impossible thing that they've ever heard in their life. In the next scene, the main dude shows his therapist what he wrote, and this is his reaction to it.
This is intriguing. I don't know what to think of it either.
And that feels like an odd reaction to me. For one thing, at the time that this scene takes place, the prediction hasn't really come true yet. So, at this moment, it's not as much a prophecy as it is a guess. And frankly, it's not that outlandish of a guess. If you'll recall from a few clips ago, he makes his prediction after falling asleep in front of a television that seems to be playing a clip of Donald Trump talking about politics. So I feel like there's a very obvious explanation for where this idea came from, and it does not involve God. Rather than not knowing what to think of it, you would think that this mental health professional would instead take a moment to give the most basic explanation of how the subconscious works. He doesn't do that though, and I think that's because were the movie to say anything about the central prophecy that wasn't just, "This is clearly a miracle," it would become obvious to anyone watching that this is all very stupid. It feels pretty clear that even the people making this don't actually think that the miracle is all that interesting, to the point that there are times when it feels like the screenwriter is struggling to find things to say about it.
And I'm not sure how to make sense of what all's happening with you. But I get the impression that God is doing something.
Thank you.
Good input. And though it might seem odd that someone would make a movie that they don't actually care about, the reason that they did becomes pretty obvious in the next part. And it rhymes with nexploiting meeples, Maleefs, more honey. They're exploiting people's beliefs for money. The first psychiatrist transfers the main dude to another doctor, and even though all I know about the dude is the glossy movie version of him, it still feels very clear to me that he's a scammer.
I read your charts from Dr. Vander and reviewed the tests we ran last week. Looks like there are several things going on here.
Well, I've read your book. I don't think this is all diet, exercise, and water.
Well, not entirely.
If the fact that he apparently thinks that PTSD is a hydration issue didn't make me feel dubious of him, then the perfectly framed copy of his book in the center of the screen certainly would have. And for those wondering, that is a real book because this is a real guy. His name is Don Colbert, and he's actually the author of many books, including Fasting Made Easy, The Bible Cure for Prostate Disorders, and of course, What Would Jesus Eat? On a hunch, I decided to Google Don Colbert lawsuit, and the malpractice case that popped up is just crazy enough that I feel obligated to read a passage of it here. And to be fair, Colbert does deny that this is what happened, but this is what the documents say. All right. The complaint seeking damages for medical malpractice alleges that Dr. Colbert was negligent in not ordering an EKG for his patient after he complained of burning epigastric pain and extreme heartburn. According to the patient, Dr. Colbert visited him at the hospital after his heart attack and asked for forgiveness for not having ordered an EKG. The patient also asserts that during the hospital visit, Dr. Colbert asked him whether he had an out-of-body experience. The patient also maintains that Dr. Colbert told him that he was guided by spiritual feelings, and that if the spirit told him to order an EKG, he would have done it. The other thing that popped up when I Googled his name was a letter from the government warning him to stop advertising things as cures for COVID. So yeah, that's who we're dealing with here. And unsurprisingly, Dr. Colbert is also integral to the story, because he tells his wife about his patient's prediction, and she in turn writes the book that this movie is based on. And hearing that, you might assume like, oh, okay, so the guy goes to the doctor and he tells his wife about this prediction that Trump will be president 4 years before it actually happens. And you might be like, okay, I can see why they were impressed by that. But no, that is not how things play out. Instead, the guy goes to Dr. Don for a long time, and then once Trump announces his candidacy, he tells the doctor about the prediction 4 years after he supposedly wrote it down. And then Dr. Don responds by being like, wow, that sounds like a miracle. Mind if I tell my wife about it? He then gives the prophecy to his wife, who reads it and is so moved by it that she seemingly reaches the point of climax.
April 28th, 2011, Commander-in-Chief. The Spirit of God says, I have chosen this man, Donald Trump, for such a time as this. For as Benjamin Netanyahu is to Israel, so shall this man be to the United States of America.
And yeah, after that, the wife kind of takes it from there. The movie stops being about the guy's PTSD and instead shifts its focus towards the wife's efforts to see the prophecy fulfilled. Her journey begins with a phone call to her son, who, based on the perfectly framed speaking tour poster of his they show us, is another faith-based scammer. Seems to run in the family.
Hey, Mom. I'm at a conference. What's up?
DJ, do you remember the commander prophecy I sent you?
I like that you had to specify which prophecy.
Yeah, sure. What about it?
I felt the Holy Spirit say I needed to get involved somehow. I have no idea what that means.
Really? I'm not particularly in touch with my spiritual side, but I feel like that one is pretty obvious. Thankfully for her, though, her son does offer her some very confusing clarity.
Mom, I just got an idea.
Yeah?
Go to 2nd Chronicles 7:14. Read that to me.
Okay. Second Chronicles. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and will forgive their sin, and will heal their land.
There's your answer.
Duh! Why didn't I think of that? Ow. I truly will never understand why people in these movies communicate in Bible quotes like that, because it never feels like a particularly easy way to get your point across. And that's especially true here, because the message of that verse doesn't seem particularly complicated. As best as I can tell, it just means that people should pray about stuff, which, like, you'd think that a hardcore Christian like her would have already known that. The conversation ends with the son telling his mom that she needs to use her connections to organize prayer circles for Trump. And then she does. Which is odd given this little interaction they have at the end.
I gotta go. Bye.
Mom?
Yeah? What is it, son?
Just so we're clear, I've never really been a Trump fan.
No worries. Neither have I.
When I think about it long enough, the logic of this movie makes my head hurt. Because yeah, she doesn't seem to like Trump all that much, and she's only supporting him because she believes that God picked him to be president. But the way that she's supporting him is by getting people together to pray to God, to ask him to make Trump president, even though the only reason they want that is because he's already picked him to be president. Whatever though, this makes sense to her, so the rest of the movie is kind of just watching her do what she can to put God's supposed plan into action. This includes making calls, doing this weird prayer session in the bathroom of an airplane that I think was supposed to be funny, but probably would have gotten her shot if she weren't a white lady, and some other things that were a bit more unexpected.
Do you know what a shofar is?
You mean the Jewish horn?
That's right. They used it as a sound for battle and to praise God for the victory. I believe God wants us to use it on Election Day.
Really?
Really?
I don't know what I was expecting to see when I set out to watch a movie called The Trump Prophecy, but I have to imagine that if I sat down beforehand and made a list of every possible thing on Earth, shofars would probably be pretty close to the bottom. And yeah, you guys all already know where this leads. Unfortunately, she and the people who prayed alongside her do get to blow their shofars. And Church Lady seems very pleased about everything, even though, again, I don't think she actually likes Trump. She's only supporting him because of something she read in her husband's patient's dream journal.
It's a miracle.
That it is.
He's winning in Michigan, he's winning in Wisconsin. You know what's interesting, Pat? In Michigan, which is fascinating, Macomb County, you know that county. That's the Reagan Democrats out there.
I can't believe this.
What?
There's a video of people in Israel who heard about this American woman leading a grand blowing of the shofar. Now they're in the streets of Israel doing the same thing.
There's that I word again. Although, to be fair, that seemed to be less about any socio-political issues associated with the area, and more just to show how far her message had spread, so I don't know. How about we forget about Israel and go see how the fireman is reacting to Trump's win?
The Spirit of God says Israel. Israel. What about Israel? or Israel will be protected by America. Once again, the Spirit says yes. America will once again stand hand in hand with Israel.
Alrighty then. Alright, I'm going to be perfectly honest here. When I decided to make a video about this movie, I did not expect it to so heavily feature the last topic in the world that I want to discuss right now. And frankly, I almost skipped making it because of that. The more I thought about it though, the more I decided that I shouldn't run away from discussing it just because it scares me, because I think that it's important to discuss it. That said, I'm going to be discussing it in the broadest terms I can manage, in the hope that less people get mad at me. And I feel like it goes without saying that I'm not an expert on this subject, but here is the situation as I understand it. So it all starts with this group of people who for their entire existence have been on the receiving end of all sorts of unnecessary hate. For the purposes of this video, I will be referring to them as the Green Team. And yeah, for generations, the Green Team has been very stupidly tyrannized and subjugated and othered just because of who they are and what they believe. Eventually, some members of the Green Team decided that they had had enough. They were sick of being persecuted, and they decided that more than anything, they just wanted a place that they could live where they felt a sense of security. We'll call these people the Yellow Team. And while this was a beautiful idea in the abstract, when they actually went to try and make their dream a reality, things got a little bit... Because the Yellow Team had a very specific place in mind for their new home, and that place already had people there. The Blue Team. Unsurprisingly, this created quite a bit of friction between the Yellow Team and the Blue Team, and that led to all sorts of horrible conflicts. Flash forward a few years, and those conflicts come to a head when the Blue Team does something very bad that I do not condone. Or more specifically, a terrorist faction of the Blue Team does something very bad that I do not condone. And it just continues the long cycle of discord and causes the Yellow Team to want to retaliate, which they have. For a while now. And though again, what the Blue Team did was horrible, what the Yellow Team is doing right now is quite a bit worse for the mere fact that they are very, very, very powerful. They have far more resources and far more money and far more weapons, and they are more than capable of decimating the Blue Team entirely. And this is largely due to the inordinate amount of support that they get from the Purple Team, of which I myself am a member. And while I'm sure that there are a lot of reasons why the Purple Team supports the Yellow Team so much, one of the main ones is the fact that there is a large faction of the Purple Team who is also on the Orange Team, and the Orange Team has a vested interest in seeing the Yellow Team win. And this is where things get a little bit kooky, because the reason the Orange Team is so invested in the Yellow Team is because they believe that if the Yellow Team wins, that will lead to the second coming of their team leader. Oh, and here's the kicker. Remember all of that persecution that the Green Team faced, which started all of this? That was largely rooted in the ideologies of the Orange Team, so... yeah, it's a fun little circle. I should drink more when I record. I actually broke that glass. Which, yeah, watching the Trump prophecy was a terrifying reminder that one of the worst tragedies of modern times is unfolding right in front of our eyes. And there are people out there who are fucking loving it. There are a lot of Christians who actively want what's happening right now to happen because they are pumped for the apocalypse for some reason, and they believe that that begins with Israel. Which is very strange when you actually stop to think about it. Because for one thing, why are they not even the protagonists of their own religion? I feel like if I were a part of a religion, and I heard that the most important thing that will ever happen in that religion revolves around the people of another religion returning to a specific place, my first thought would probably be, I should join that religion. That sounds like the important one. Also, why the fuck are evangelicals so goddamn obsessed with trying to jumpstart the end of the world? I feel like if it is part of God's plan, then he'll get to it when he gets to it. In the meantime, I think that they should probably just focus on all the other things that he told them to do. Like not killing people. Which is another reason why this obsession with Judgment Day is so odd to me. The book of Revelation is a very weird heel turn when you look at it in the context of the rest of the Bible. So why are people so focused on it? I feel like being a Doomsday Christian is the same as if you asked someone reading The Lord of the Rings, what's that about? And they were like, just some guy named Tom Bombadil. For the record, I've never actually read The Lord of the Rings, so I don't know if that joke makes sense, but I really like saying Tom Bombadil. So, Bombadil. So much of what these people believe does not align with anything that feels even slightly logical to me, and so I find it deeply terrifying when I stop to think about all the influence they have over the world, and I really, really, really want to do whatever I can to make sure that they don't get any more. And this was supposed to be the easy part of this video. Like I said, the reason I watched the Trump prophecy is because I'm worried about Trump getting elected, and I wanted to find ways to tell people not to vote for him. And if this movie had been about abortion, or equal rights, or even the economy, I'd probably be doing that right about now. But unfortunately, it's about Israel, so things aren't that simple. Because the guy I'm arguing for when I argue against Trump also happens to be the guy handling that whole situation right now. And the sad fact of the matter is that he's doing a shit job at it. If you would have told me 4 years ago that Donald Trump was the candidate again, I would not have been able to imagine a situation where my thoughts on the matter weren't just close your eyes and vote for the other guy, but here we are. The things that Biden has enabled and then defended himself for enabling are genuinely disgusting, and I could see how the idea of giving him any amount of support can make you feel sick to your stomach. And if that's you, then I'm absolutely not going to sit here and tell you to just do it, because no, you shouldn't have to. That said, though, I do feel like there's another group of people who also don't want to vote for Biden, and it has less to do with an utter disgust that they feel with him, and more with a minor hatred that they feel for him, coupled with an utter disillusionment that they feel with the system as a whole. I feel like there are a bunch of people who would say that while Biden is definitely better than Trump, he's still bad. And they're sick of having to choose between two terrible options, so they're just not going to do it. I guess the chronically online way of putting it is vote for Biden. He's only 10% Hitler. And it's like, yeah, when you put it that way. And here's the thing. I don't disagree with those people on literally any level. I think that cosmically they're absolutely right. You shouldn't be forced to empower someone you hate every 4 years just because they're slightly better than someone else terrible. That said, though, I gotta be honest, every time I hear someone say that they're not gonna vote for president, my first thought is always kind of like, okay, then you better be a part of a militia that I don't know about, because those are kind of our only two paths forward here. I also don't love the idea of voting for 10% Hitler, but that said, 10% Hitler is 5.4 million people saved. I'm not voting for Biden because I think that the system works. I'm doing it because I know that it's broken. I have often said that it's very fucked up how much of the American political system revolves around waiting for an old person in ceremonial robes to die, but unfortunately, that's the world that we live in. And if, in the next 4 years, one of those old people does die, or more likely is bribed to vacate their seat, I don't want them being replaced by some 24-year-old lawyer who just graduated from pro-life university with a minor in homophobia, because that person will have quite a bit of influence over my life for quite a long time. And I'm not saying that you don't still criticize Biden and vote in local elections and make your voice heard from day one so that hopefully by the time the next election rolls around, you don't feel like you're choosing between a rock and a hard place. I just think that all that stuff will be a lot easier to do under 10% Hitler than 100% Hitler. Because the sad truth is that Trump doesn't scare me because I think that he's a moron. I mean, I do, but that's not what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of all the stuff that he and his supporters actively want to happen. Choosing between him and Biden is kind of like... Okay, imagine I'm on a plane. I would not be happy to find out that my pilot was a blind guy with no hands who is trying to land the plane 100 miles away from my intended destination. But I prefer that to a straight-up kamikaze. It really sucks that we have to settle for slightly better, but I also think that when slightly better is the best option, we should still pick it. I think it's important to engage with the world as it is, and I think that's why certain Christians freak me out sometimes, because they super don't do that. They're making decisions based on prophecies and parables and books written hundreds of years ago by a guy who was probably just tripping on shrooms in a cave. And who knows, maybe time will prove them right, but for now, by focusing solely on those things, they're completely losing sight of the things that are definitely happening right in front of their eyes. And frankly, I think that's why trying to change their mind can be a bit of a fool's errand. Like I said, one of the reasons I watched this movie was to try and think of ways to maybe convince them to not vote for Trump, but if I learned anything from this, it's that that is going to be very, very hard. The sad truth is that there is no easy way to reason with them, because they operate under a very different form of reason than the rest of us. And because of that, the best idea I could come up with was, what if we used their reason? What if Trump is of the devil? After all, the devil's goal is to deceive you and turn you away from God, so if you've come to praise anyone as much as certain evangelicals praise Trump, then isn't it always a possibility that the devil made them do it? It would certainly make sense in the context of this movie. When the dude makes the titular Trump prophecy, he's engulfed in the same hellfires that are there when he's visited by the devil. It honestly does kind of seem like maybe the devil visited him one last time and tricked him into enabling the rise of one of his minions in order to start something terrible. I mean, let's be honest here, if there's a person on earth who would make a deal with the devil, it's Donald Trump. And I don't even mean that because he's evil, he just likes making deals. I don't know. Maybe this isn't the best line of argument, but at this point, I think that anything is worth a try. Because the way things have been going lately, the Trump prophecy may very well come true. And based on everything I've seen recently, that doesn't really feel like something an all-loving God would want. But yeah, that's my video. Please like and subscribe and share and Maybe don't comment on this one. No, still comment. I need the engagement, even if it'll make me sad. Also, if you haven't turned on me after this episode and want to support me, you can do so via Patreon or through Super Thanks, which, speaking of, I have some Super Thanks to Super Thanks back. Thank you to Toxic Soup, I Am Probably Wrong, Debbie D2715, I think I'm dyslexic, Martini Pistache, and I Am Probably Wrong again. Honestly, I am probably wrong. I should thank you 1,000 times. You were very nice to me. And yeah, that's my video. Thanks for watching. We're in hell. Just kidding, that's not actually my video. There's still this segment here. And I am going to be terrified in it. Because I'm going to call this like, the Trump prophecy is the scariest movie I've ever seen. So, yeah, I should act terrified. Which should not be hard. So, like... Oh my God. Huh. Ooh. It's really sad because literally every comment I've ever gotten is "you look terrified." But then I go to say I'm going to be terrified. And I feel like I'm doing a poor job at being terrified. I don't know. This video is kind of a mess. I think I said this at the beginning, but just to reiterate, I filmed most of this before the debate. And I feel like the debate changes how this will read. And I do want to say I still stand by what I said. But yeah, I'm really hoping that he drops out. I hope that these are not our two choices. But if they are, choose the lesser of two evils. Okay, this is helping me look terrified. Let's use it. Let's use it. Like, oh God. I feel like the key to my success is making sure that I have a jawline. It is really interesting. Like, I can tell if a video is going to do well or better. I feel like I get like 5,000 more views if I have a good photo of myself in the thumbnail. I'm recording this part earlier in the morning if it seems more than usual. Did I hit record? Yes. Good. And then I should try one with my knitting, I guess. Just me stabbing myself in the neck. YouTube, ignore that I just did that. I feel like they wouldn't like that. It was an actual. I don't know where my other needle is. So this will be a knitting free. Oh, here it is. Ah! Oh no. Ugh. I think I just revealed that I'm not wearing a shirt under this sweater. It's hot. This is a dickie. Anyway. I don't know. My little battery light is flashing, so I'm going to call it there. Thank you for watching. If anyone out there is from Canada and wants to engage in a green card marriage, let me know. Goodbye.